Welcome to Bleed Purple, a 10-part podcast about the 125-year history of Tarleton State University. Host Drew Myers will cover Tarleton's rich traditions, speak with notable alumni, and uncover the stories that give Tarleton its lasting legacy. Here's your host, Drew Myers.
Howdy, I'm Drew Myers, and you're listening to the Bleed Purple podcast, which tells the story of Tarleton State University through the stories of the people who bleed purple. On every episode, we're sitting down with individuals who have a heart for this university, like Dr. Bud Frazier, our featured guest on this episode of Bleed Purple. We recently recorded this episode at Dr. Frazier's ranch outside of Stephenville. He was in town for graduation, and he received an honorary doctorate degree for his remarkable and industry-changing advancements in cardiovascular medicine. This is the first in a two-part series highlighting Dr. Frazier and his amazing career. We're also going to capture his heart for Tarleton State. Before I start sharing parts of my conversation with Dr. Frazier, I just wanted to say thank you guys for listening. If you like what we're doing on this podcast, please like, comment, and rate the show. If you haven't subscribed, definitely do that. Just go to your favorite podcast platform and search Bleed Purple. Now, let's jump into my conversation with Dr. Bud Frazier. You've had a full weekend in Stephenville, Texas. You were on the field for graduation. You received an honorary doctorate from Tarleton State University, and we're recording this podcast to kind of wrap up the weekend with a nice red ribbon. My first question for you, Dr. Frazier, out of the gate is, what did this weekend mean to you?
Well, it was very meaningful to me and, of course, to my family and, of course, in memory of my father, I think, mainly. And it was always impressive to come to Tarleton for me. I grew up 2 blocks from Tarleton campus, and I spent a lot of my youth playing basketball in the gym, for one thing, or tennis. They had tennis courts, only tennis courts. And it was a nice memory. But there were only 800 students, and it was a junior college then. And, of course, the main thing that impresses me today about Tarleton is how it's expanded. And I think how it's become a rallying point, I think, for people, students. So it's interesting. It seemed to me that there was a lot of the students come from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so they're come from a real cosmopolitan area to it's still more of a town, Stephenville is, although it was about 7,000 when I grew up here, and it's 30,000 or so now. So
it's changed a little bit, huh?
Yeah. So it was a nice experience, and I was impressed with that they still hand out diplomas. It's quite an effort for the staff of Tarleton to do that, and I think it does make it more meaningful to the students. I remember I graduated from the University of Texas, and they had all the graduates out in the auditorium in the gymnasium, and they just stood up. That was it. All the graduates, please stand. They stood up and then sat down. Of course, it was, 2,000 graduates or so they couldn't have them walk across. But I think they did a good job. It was a good ceremony, and I think it was well appreciated.
Talk a little bit about your dad. We talked a little bit about it before we hit record on this, but just talk about your father. Again, track coach and math professor here at Tarleton.
Well, as I said, he grew up in Hillsboro, and he and my uncle won the first state championship track meet in 1918. And my uncle scored most of the points, but both went to A&M when they finished high school, and my uncle didn't stay there very long. He was a very aggressive sort of person, and my father was always a gentleman. I never heard him raise his voice. So my uncle didn't last there very long. His name was Mule Frazier. Everybody knew him. When I started working in surgery with Dr. Cooley, the most renowned heart surgeon in the world at the time, when he found out my name was Frazier, he asked me if I was any kin to Mule Frazier, because my uncle was very well known in the 20s and 30s. But my father came back to Tarleton in 1925, and he stayed there the rest of his life. And I know he always seemed, of course, he went in the war. He left in the war, World War II. But that was the only time, he was away from Stephenville and Tarleton. But I know he was very fond of the place. They were very fond of him. They dedicated the annual every year. Tarleton had an annual. I don't know if they still have those or not, but they dedicated it to him twice. So he was very popular. And at his funeral in the Methodist Church, they couldn't seat everybody. They had people on the outside.
His name is on the track at Tarleton now.
Yeah, he was the track coach. He ran track at A&M, and he coached track and football at both when he went to Hillsborough High School after he left A&M. And he came here, he coached both. But with time, it evolved. He was just the track coach, and he had great success as a track coach. He won like 26 or 27 conference championships. And he coached two that went to the Olympics. There were two people that went to the Olympics that he coached at Tarleton.
Did you think of your dad this weekend?
Well, yeah, I thought, it was more of an honor to him, I suppose. And I think, and I know he would have been very, very thankful, I guess, for the recognition.
Again, we are on the heels of your honorary doctorate from Tarleton State University. You're recognized at the graduation this weekend. If your dad had been there to see this, what would he have said to you?
Work harder. Well, he was always pleased, I must say. He was always encouraging success or failure. He was always. My mother was a little tougher, but my uncle was even tougher. But my father was a gentle, graceful man who was always positive. And I think that would have been his response. That, I think he would have been proud that I continued to work in spite of the opposition, because literally there wasn't anybody believed that you could have a pump that didn't create a pulse.
I want to push pause on our conversation real quick. Dr. Frazier started discussing remarkable advancements that he spearheaded in cardiovascular medicine, and we'll dive into that part of our conversation in part 2 of this 2-part series. But what I want to do right now is close down part 1 with some good stories. Again, on this podcast, we're telling the story of Tarleton State University through the stories of the people who bleed purple. The first story I want to share: when Dr. Frazier was attending Tarleton, he helped reconstruct the stone gate at Military Way on campus. They widened the gate to allow bigger vehicles to come through. Here is Dr. Frazier explaining.
That was one of my jobs in the summer. I worked construction work, and I was working for the people that wanted to widen the gates that lead up to the president's home. I helped widen those gates. Every time I drive through there, I remember working on that as a construction job in the summer. So that's one indelible mark I left on Tarleton. And I also signed my name on the concrete that it went on. You could do that in the concrete when it was soft. Anyway, Tarleton's been a great asset to me and to my family, and I think to our country and in many cases to the world. You think of, Earl Rudder and all the people that are less well known but have been very contributory to our country.
While we were recording our conversation, there were other people in the room, and some of those people threw out stories that they personally wanted to hear. Dr. Frazier's son brought up a neighbor who marched up and down the street on a weekly basis, wearing his uniform from the Spanish-American War. Dr. Frazier chuckled a little when he was reminded of this story, and then he explained the patriotic occurrence that happened right here in Stephenville every week.
Once a week, I've forgotten which day, I think a Thursday or something like that, he would march down the street from the Neblet, which was about 2 blocks, down to Tarleton and march back up. And we used to go out and watch him. He was in his Spanish-American War uniform. Of course, he was very proud of that Spanish-American War, which nobody else even knew existed, But I thought that was an impressive thing for me, and it showed the dedication to the past that we all have to have. We also have to have something to build on, and I think that was a great contribution. And I think, as I said, just growing up around my father, who had this calm resolution to do things, and he just always would try to see the positive, even in the most negative things. Well, it can be better. And I think that's one of the things that influenced me a lot in my career. Looking forward, not looking backward.
An ongoing theme throughout our recording session was the name of this podcast, Bleed Purple. The irony was pretty obvious. I was having a conversation with a heart surgeon, and blood is not purple. Someone in the room brought that up while we were talking. This was Dr. Frazier's response. But real quick, before I play that excerpt, this soundbite starts to trickle into Dr. Frazier's journey in cardiovascular medicine. It's the beginning of our segue into our next episode, which showcases his illustrious career. During these industry-related stories, you'll start to hear names like Dr. Michael E. DeBakey and Dr. Denton A. Cooley. These gentlemen were on the forefront of heart surgeries, heart transplants, and the development of the artificial heart. Dr. Frazier speaks very highly of these men that he worked alongside. Starting with this soundbite and carrying over into the second part of this 2-part series. Again, here is Dr. Frazier confirming that people don't actually bleed purple.
No, it's a little blue, but it's not quite purple. But it is certainly blue. Unoxygenated blood has a bluish tint, and you can see it immediately when it goes through the oxygenator. It immediately turns red. So that's one of the things that we did. And again, in the history of heart surgery, they didn't have any way to stop the heart because they couldn't create a pulse, but until they finally figured out, and Dr. Cooley was the master of that. That's why people came to Houston. You didn't come to Houston for the weather or the beach. You came there for heart surgery because Dr. Cooley was the best cardiac surgeon in the world. And I think that's the thing that impressed me is how the nature attaches the oxygen. All you have to do is expose it. Nature does the rest. And Dr. Cooley was the first one to really master that. And we're all built on the things of the past, and that certainly helped my career, and a lot of what Dr. DeBakey did also. His resolution, I think, helped me more because Dr. Cooley was just a master surgeon, but he didn't do research per se. And Dr. DeBakey always worked on artificial pumps and things, and that I was able to continue that work. And I had a milieu that would allow me to do it. So I think that's the most important thing. Doesn't matter what you want to do or what you think you want to do. you have to be in a milieu that will allow you to do it. Otherwise, everything is to no avail. And I was fortunate to be in a milieu that I could do things.
I want to close down this first episode highlighting Dr. Bud Frazier with an excerpt from our conversation about influence. I wanted to know who played a significant role in his life, helped inspire him to become the man he was. This is what Dr. Frazier said.
My father was probably the most inspirational because, as I said, he was unfazed by anything negative or positive. He was always the same. And I think I learned more from him in that regard, is to say, to keep your quintessential essence as calmly as possible and to continue to reach for goals. You know, he's won more track championships than anybody as a coach, but he always did it without he never raised his voice, as I said. He never said anything negative. He was always positive and always looking at things in a positive way, and I think that probably helped me more than anything else.
Yes, sir. What a great way to end this episode of Bleed Purple. Again, the official podcast of Tarleton State University. Thank you, Dr. Frazier. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Doug McLemore is the founder of McLemore Financial Group and a proud Tarleton graduate and supporter. The company specializes in providing personalized financial planning and investment strategies tailored just for you. Whether you're saving for retirement, planning for your child's education, or seeking to grow your wealth, their experienced advisors are here to guide you every step of the way. You can find them at 1529 West Lingleville Road in Stephenville, or on the web at mclemoregroup.com, or give them a call at 254-968-1020 to schedule your free consultation. McLemore Financial Group is your partner in financial success. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through McLemore Financial Group, a DBA of Advisor Resource Council, a registered investment advisor. McLemore Financial Group and Advisor Resource Council are separate entities from LPL Financial.